Have you ever felt it? That chill down your spine when the night is too quiet, when you know you're not alone? Tonight, I'll take you deep into 4 terrifying stories you'll never forget. But before we begin, if you dare to step into the dark with us, make sure to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share it with someone brave enough to watch. And if you've ever had a chilling experience of your own, a night you still can't explain, drop it in the comments below, because the scariest stories are the ones that are true. Story 1. The Forgotten Treehouse. When I was 12 years old, my best friend Ethan and I lived in a small town in Vermont. Our neighborhood backed into a thick patch of woods that seemed endless when you were a kid. One summer afternoon, while exploring deeper than usual, we stumbled upon something we swore hadn't been there before. A treehouse. But not the kind you build with your dad over a weekend. This thing was enormous, spanning across multiple oak trees, with ladders, rope bridges, and even broken glass windows hammered into wooden frames. The wood was old and grey, but the structure looked too intact to be abandoned. What really unsettled us was how neither of our parents had ever mentioned it. They both grew up in the same town, and they swore no one had ever built anything like that back there. Inside, the air felt colder, like walking into a basement. Carved into the walls were dozens of names etched deep into the wood as if by a knife. Most of them were faded, but one name was fresh, like it had been scratched only hours earlier. Caleb. We didn't know any Caleb. Beneath it, another word was gouged in frantic, shaky letters. Help. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I shut my eyes, all I saw was that desperate word. And when we went back the next day, a new detail had appeared beneath it. A date. The exact date we discovered the treehouse. After that day, Ethan and I couldn't stay away. Every afternoon, we'd rush back to the treehouse, half terrified, half addicted to see what had changed. And things did change. First, scraps of paper started showing up. Dirty, yellowed notebook pages folded neatly and tucked under loose floorboards. The first note said, "Do you see me?" We laughed nervously, thinking it had to be some elaborate prank. But every day a new note appeared, each one stranger than the last. "I can hear you when you laugh. You're sitting in my room. Caleb doesn't play here anymore." By the 4th note, Ethan wanted to tell his parents. I begged him not to. I don't know why. Maybe part of me wanted to prove we weren't just imagining it. Then came the note that made me wish we had told someone sooner. It was written in thick, almost smeared pencil lines, like whoever wrote it had been shaking uncontrollably. It read, "Don't go home tonight." When I showed Ethan, his face drained of color. He muttered something about how maybe it was just kids messing with us, but I could see in his eyes he didn't believe that anymore. That evening, as the sun went down, we sat in the treehouse debating whether to leave. That's when we heard it. A creaking noise from above. We looked up. One of the ceiling panels was slowly being pushed upward from the outside, as if something or someone was crawling across the roof. The sound stopped. We sat frozen, listening. The woods were dead silent. No crickets, no wind. Then 3 sharp knocks on the outside wall of the treehouse. Knock, knock, knock. I swear the wood shook with each hit. Ethan bolted for the ladder, but I grabbed his arm. Something deep in my stomach told me that whatever was outside was waiting for us to come down. The knocking stopped. Then a whisper seeped through the cracks in the wall, a raspy, broken voice that made my entire body lock up. "Which one of you is Caleb?" I've never seen Ethan so terrified. We didn't answer. We just pressed our backs against the wall, praying it would go away. Suddenly, the ceiling panel burst inward, slamming against the floor with a deafening crash. We didn't look up. We just ran, scrambling down the ladder, tearing through the woods until we collapsed in Ethan's yard. His mum rushed out, demanding to know what had happened. But when we dragged her back to the treehouse, it was gone. I don't mean abandoned or torn down. I mean gone. There was nothing but empty trees, not a single nail or plank left behind. For years we both questioned what we saw, but the carved name haunted me. 3 months later, our town made the news. A boy named Caleb Anderson, who lived only a few streets away, had been reported missing. The date carved into that wall? The exact day he disappeared. Story 2. The Watcher in the Window. When I was 13, my family moved to a quiet suburban neighborhood in Dayton, Ohio. Our new house sat on a cul-de-sac, and directly across the street stood an enormous oak tree with an old treehouse nailed into its branches. From the very first night, that treehouse kept me awake, not because of the way it leaned at an unnatural angle or how its wooden boards sagged like they were ready to snap, but because of the window. Every night, without fail, a figure stood there, perfectly still, just a dark silhouette framed in the square window of the treehouse. I told my parents, but they brushed it off, said it was probably just my imagination adjusting to a new place. Except it wasn't my imagination. On the third night, I waved at it, and it waved back. I couldn't take it anymore. One Friday night, I convinced my neighbor and only friend, Dylan, to sneak out with me. We waited until midnight, then crept across the cul-de-sac, flashlights in hand. Up close, the treehouse looked worse. Wood was rotting, nails jutting out at odd angles, the ladder missing half its rungs. But the window was there, wide open, empty. Inside, it smelled like mold and damp soil. The floorboards groaned under our weight. We shined our flashlights around, expecting something. At first, nothing. Just broken toys, a pile of blankets, and empty soda cans. But then Dylan's light froze on the far wall. Scratched deep into the wood in hundreds of frantic overlapping lines were the words, "Don't look at the window." Before we could process it, something outside tapped against the glass. 3 sharp, deliberate knocks. I turned my flashlight toward the window. There it was again, a figure closer now, its head tilted at an impossible angle, staring straight at us. We bolted. Dylan scrambled down the ladder first, nearly breaking his leg on the missing rung. I followed, but halfway down I heard the floor above me creak, as if someone had stepped forward. I didn't look back. We sprinted across the street, hearts pounding, not stopping until we were in my bedroom with the door locked. We tried to calm down, convincing ourselves it was just some kid messing with us. Then I glanced out my window. The treehouse window was empty. Relief washed over me until I noticed the shape, not in the treehouse, but in my window's reflection, standing just behind us. I spun around. Nothing. Dylan swore he saw it too. He refused to ever come back to my house again. A week later, the neighbors across the street moved out suddenly. No for sale sign, no explanation, just gone overnight. The treehouse? 2 days later, it collapsed in a storm. The oak split clean down the middle like something had hollowed it out from the inside. But I'll never forget the last thing I saw that night. That reflection. Its head tilted, its hand slowly raising like it was still waving goodbye. Story 3. The Silent Friend. When I was 9 years old, my younger sister Lily was only 6. We lived in a small rural town outside Austin, Texas, where our backyard stretched into an overgrown patch of woods. At the edge of those woods stood a crooked old treehouse left behind by the family who owned the house before us. The first week we moved in, Lily started spending all her time up there. She'd sit for hours talking, whispering, and sometimes even laughing. One evening, my mom asked, "Who are you talking to, honey?" Without hesitation, Lily smiled and said, "My new friend, Thomas. He lives in the treehouse." My parents thought it was cute. I didn't, because every time I asked if I could meet Thomas, Lily would frown and say, "He doesn't like you. He only likes me." Weeks passed, and Lily grew different. Pale, withdrawn, sometimes mumbling to herself even when she wasn't in the treehouse. One night, I followed her. She snuck outside after midnight, barefoot, climbing the ladder in silence. I hid behind a bush, watching. She sat cross-legged inside, facing the darkest corner of the treehouse, and then she whispered, "Yes, Thomas, I'll do it." My stomach turned cold. I wanted to run, but then Lily pulled something out of her pocket, our mom's necklace. She held it out, arms shaking, as if offering it to someone sitting right in front of her. But there was no one there. Or at least, that's what I thought. The next morning, I snuck back up to the treehouse, determined to prove it was just her imagination. What I found still haunts me. On the wall, drawn in charcoal, was a stick figure family: Mom, Dad, me, and Lily. Next to her was another figure, taller, with a wide smile scribbled across its face. Beneath it, in a child's messy handwriting, were the words, "Thomas loves Lily." I thought maybe Lily had drawn it herself, until I saw the photo pinned beside it. A Polaroid, old faded, edges curling. It showed a boy about Lily's age standing inside that very same treehouse, but the date at the bottom said 1979, and scribbled on the back, in jagged black marker, was a message that made me drop it instantly. I'm still here. Story 4. The Buried Pit. When I was 15, my cousin Jake and I spent the summer at my grandparents' cabin in rural Oregon. The cabin was surrounded by thick pine forest, the kind that always felt darker than it should be. One afternoon while exploring, we caught a horrible stench, like rotting meat mixed with damp earth. Following it, we stumbled into a small clearing. In the center was a pit, perfectly round, about 6 feet across, dug deep into the ground. The smell was unbearable. Buzzing flies circled the edge. We thought maybe it was an animal grave, but when Jake tossed a rock inside, we both froze. Something moved. Not an animal, not human, but the sound it made, a wet dragging noise like something crawling closer from the darkness, sent us running back to the cabin. That night we told Grandpa. His face went pale. He ordered us never to go near it again. When we pressed him, he muttered one thing before walking away. That pit's been there longer than the cabin. Of course, we didn't listen. 2 nights later, curiosity got the better of us. We snuck out with flashlights, retracing our steps until we found the clearing again. The pit was still there, darker than ever, like the ground itself had swallowed all the light. Jake leaned over the edge, shining his flashlight. "Hello?" he whispered. "Hello?" At first, nothing. Then, faintly, a voice echoed back. "Hello." But it wasn't an echo. It was off, slower, wetter, like someone trying to copy him. Jake laughed nervously, thinking it was me messing with him. He whispered again, "Who's down there?" And the voice replied, clearer this time, "Jake is." His flashlight flickered. Mine went out completely. Panic surged through me as something started clawing its way up the dirt walls. We bolted, crashing through the woods, branches whipping our faces. I swear I could still hear it, heavy, wet breathing, just behind us. When we finally burst into the cabin, Grandpa was waiting by the door, shotgun in hand. His eyes were wide, but not surprised. He didn't ask if we'd gone back, he already knew. All he said was, "The pit doesn't take kindly to names." We left the next morning. And to this day, whenever I close my eyes, I can still hear that voice, dragging my cousin's name out of the dark.